Hello and welcome back. This is MC1 Gamer, taking another look at the Flesh Eater Courts, but this time we're going to take a look at the Battalion Warscrolls. So these have been posted up around the net today, been posted on the Warhammer YouTubers channel as well, and I wanted to go take a look at them because some of them are a little crazy, and they really, as any Battalion Warscroll would, further expand on some of the capabilities that we've already gone over in quite a few videos and a number of people have looked at over the course of this week. I did 2 videos. I appeared on a show with James from Star Mini Gaming, and we talked about a bunch of different things regarding this, along with Tom from Warhammer Weekly. And a number of shows have gone over and looked at this. I know that Andy and Remy took a good did a little dive as well. I'm sure that everybody's seen the Warscrolls for the updated Ghouls and Cryptars and some of the new units with the multi-part kits, which is all great. But now the Battalion Scrolls come in, and they're really specific for this faction, and there's a lot of them, and they're pretty crazy. So this one here is the biggest one. Now, I wanted to show it first because I wanted to come back to this, because I don't want to lay down the groundwork initially, because this one is huge, absolutely huge. I have a massive death army. I have a stack of carry cases. They're plastic bins, like storage bins that you would get at a Staples or any kind of office store, I'm sure. And I've built them so that I bolted, tops to bottom so they can, inherently stack, and I can lift them up with, a bungee cord handle. And it's tall. It's about 4.5 to 5 feet tall. It goes, past my, not past my shoulders, but it goes right up to my chest. I'm not a very tall guy, but there's a lot of cases here. And then I've got a couple of cases not bolted on. I've got a lot of models in those cases. And then I've got a lot of stuff that's still in the process of being built. I don't have nearly enough to make a qualified Flesh Eater Court battalion. It's amazing how many models this would include. I think that the biggest army I've ever put on the table at one point was a Nagash-centric army, which probably comprised about 60% of my models. And we're talking like well over 100 zombies, well over 100 skeletons, about, I think, 50 ghouls, a dozen cryptars. There's a lot of stuff in that army. I didn't put quite all those cryptars in because I had some in reserve to summon, but even so, there was a lot of models on that table, and it took 3 or 4 game tables, just for my side in this mega battle against, I think it was 4 or 5 opponents. That was a huge amount of stuff that I put on the table at that one point. I can't even guess at how big it would be if I calculated it in 8th edition terms. It would probably be, what I put on the table at that time probably would be, it probably would be 20,000 points at least, just that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff in my army. This is a crazy Battalion Warscroll, and you'll see why. Just to go over it really briefly, when you look at the organization chart, usually in a battalion organization chart, it says X number of models of this type and this unit, the X number of Warscrolls from that. This one is based off of Warscrolls. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Warscrolls. This Battalion Warscroll is comprised of 8 Battalion Warscrolls. It's probably, unless I'm missing something from maybe the Stormcast Eternals or something, or some other. Please correct me if I missed that. If there's another Battalion Warscroll that's as big as this. So and cast judgment after you've seen this video, or maybe after you've looked at it yourself, if you already have. But please tell me if that's the case, because we're going to go through this. We're going to take a look at these. First off, let's come back to this one, because this is a combination of 8 Warscrolls in and of itself. So let's see if we can take a look at each one of these individually, and then come back to this big one, so we can see just how massive or dare I say tremendous this is, and you can go ahead and drink. All right, so this is the first one, the Abattoir. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, guys. The courtier or courtier is up for debate, and I haven't had anybody come back to me and say I'm doing it wrong or right. But this Abattoir, is that how it's pronounced? Hey, let me know. I'm not qualified to say yes or no, but that's what I'm thinking it is. But it's a little too shishy for a flesh eater court, in my opinion. But they are trying to be this noble court, so maybe that's the whole point. Okay. The Abattoir reaps a fleshy toll from the opposing army, the Lord Liver Belch, directing its warriors with exacting precision to carve bloody chunks of meat for the king's feasting table. There's some character on these scrolls. I really like that. This Lord River Belch really kind of sounds more ogreish or orcish to me. So, or ogre, or either, however, whatever the Age of Sigmar versions of these guys are. But it just doesn't sound to me like like a ghoulish version. But hey, whatever floats your boat. Okay, so what's included in this one battalion? That's again a sub part of the larger grand battalion. I'll call them grand battalions. That makes sense. That's a good key. You've heard it first. This is that one that we just saw a second ago is called the grand battalion. Go ahead, spread that around the net and give me credit. I'll be accepting royalty checks. Okay, so this one is consisted of 4 units. 1 unit of crypt haunter courtiers or courtiers, however you want to pronounce it. 2 units of crypt horrors and 1 unit of crypt ghouls. So body part acquisition. In a nutshell, in your hero phase, you roll a dice for each enemy model within 3 inches of a model from this particular battalion. Wow, there's going to be some rough stuff trying to keep track of all the battalions. You're going to need some ways to do that. Just go off on a tangent, because especially if you're using the big one, it's going to be a lot of stacking of these battalions and clusters of them kind of overlapping in different ways, because they don't all have to be in the same place. And I would say things like tokens, those little crystal gems of different colors, just to put down on top of the base. Not to denote wounds or anything, just to know which ones they go to. But it's going to require some creativity, and I'm sure, I don't know if there's going to be a market for the token guys out there. Maybe if there's a lot of people contact LitGo, for example, they might go and do it, but you're going to have to find some method of your own, because keeping track of this is going to be a bitch, and you'll see why. So in this case, if you're already within 3 inches, meaning you're probably already in combat. On a roll of a 6, the unit of the model being rolled for suffers a mortal wound. So you're essentially applying a mortal wound for enemy units that are within 3 inches. They say yes, within combat range, and it's only a roll of a 6, only a 6 on a die 6 that you get it. But if you have several of these units in combat already, this is one of those I don't want to confuse anybody with pile in, but one of those extra abilities that can add additional wounds. These things can add up when it comes to battle shock at the end of the turn. But it's a nice little bonus. But I don't think that this. I mean, look, if you have a lot of enemy units within range, you'll get an extra wound here or there. The choice is cuts. So you add one to the wound rolls for the Abattoir's courtier in the combat phase if the target is a monster. Okay, now this is where record keeping is going to become a bitch too, because there is rerolls that are included in the Flesh Eater Court. There's additions to the rolls. You're going to have to be able to keep track of that stuff, and that's going to, again, this is going to be a token heavy, probably the most token heavy force I've seen yet in Age of Sigmar, because there's so many things that stack with all the different combinations. Okay, so because let's realize, and we can also call up the sheet for the courtier and the crypt horrors. So we're looking at the haunter courtier, the crypt horrors, and the crypt ghouls. So let's just take a quick look at that. All right. So the let's see, crypt horrors and crypt ghouls. So if we go look at the crypt horrors for one, and we take a look at the war scroll. So you can re-roll failed hit rolls if you're within range of a Ghoul King with this one. So you're going to have to look at all kinds of measurements. This is within 15 inches. So remember that later on. These crypt horrors get that ability if they're within range of a Ghoul King. So they're already re-rolling fail to hit rolls, and in this case, they would get pluses. So let's take a look at the next one. So we're talking about, that's Crypt Horrors. Let's look at the Crypt Haunter Courtier. The Crypt Haunter Courtier is basically a Crypt Horror with the funky ears. And this one has, all right, this one, if you can re-roll fail to hit rolls for this model if it's within 15 inches. So same theme. And then this one gives you the ability to bring in more Crypt Horrors into your army. So you can basically add one model to Crypt Horrors from your army on a roll 5 or more. And you can distribute them. You roll 6 dice, and on a 5 or 6, you can get an extra. So on average, you're going to get 2 in each hero phase automatically. No spell unbind or anything like that. So that's pretty nice. So you'll be able to grow this particular battalion even further. And then you have 1 unit of ghouls, which is surprising. Now, it could be any size unit of ghouls, but you're going to see there's a lot of activity here with ghouls in these battalions, which is good. So even if you have, like I do, I think about 50 ghouls I have, it's not going to nearly be enough. You're going to need more ghouls in order to qualify for the big battalion. Now, not everybody's going to want to do this, and not everybody's going to need to do this. I'm just saying this is the potential, so be prepared for that kind of stuff. So let's take a real quick look at the Crypt Ghouls. We'll be coming back to this stuff. The Crypt Ghouls, this is, again, let me also emphasize, this is the Flesh Eater version of these Warscrolls, because even on the Facebook page, where a lot of people are getting rules calls or feedback information directly from GW, and FAQs were posted there, where they said feel free to use either version of these Warscrolls. So the Death Faction of Grand Alliance book has their version of Warscrolls, and then there's the Flesh Eater version. So yes, if you want to go and summon still zombie dragons and terrorgeists, you can mix and match these two. You just got to keep track of which is which again, more tokens, more things to delineate this stuff, more things to keep track of, which is going to be a pain. All right, the Crypt Gas, this is the Crypt Gas Courtier. He's not included in this. I picked the wrong one, or maybe he's in the same PDF. That's probably what it is. Yes, he's in the same PDF, but we're not talking about him for this particular Warscroll. So the this has battalion strength, so you get an extra attack if you have 20 or more, which is really when you want to maximize these guys. But that's going to be hard to do unless you have well over 100 Crypt Ghouls, and even more. We're talking about maybe hundreds of Crypt Ghouls, because if you want each one to have the best possible maximum capability, you want to have each one to be not just 20, maybe 30. Because they're going to take losses, and you want to try to maintain their highest level. But if you want to qualify for this and you don't want to have 300 or ghouls, then which is going to be very, very difficult to play. You're not going to be playing that very often. And if you convert them like I do, it's going to be even that much harder to have that many. It's just going to be very rare to be playing that. So just keep that in mind. But in this particular case, you could have as little as 10 for each one of these, but 20 or more is really what you want for the maximum capability. But the royal approval in this one, again, you re-roll hit rolls of 1 already for the Crypt Ghouls that are within 15 inches of a Ghoul King. Any Ghoul King. It doesn't have to be the general. So now we have this synergy now where you're getting pluses to those hit rolls, and now you're getting a lot of re-rolls. In this case, it's a re-roll of 1. Remember something also. This is a core rule. You can't reroll a reroll, but there's going to be a lot of things that stack. If you're already getting a reroll for all hits, all wounds, just keep that in mind. You're not also getting a reroll for ones. You kind of get the best one, and that's it. There's really only very special cases where you get to reroll stuff more than once. I think it's mechanics that they're not even really rerolling. It's just if you roll a 6 or if you fail, you get more like the Seraphon Ripperdactyls have something wacky that you just keep going, until you hit. You just keep re-rolling. It's really, really rare to see anything like that. Fundamentally, you're not re-rolling re-rolls in Age of Sigmar otherwise. All right, so that's the kind of synergies we're seeing there. We're seeing this ability to add 1 to wound rolls if it's against a monster. So you have to keep that in mind if you're using this Warscroll. In some cases, you're going to have these synergies if you're near a Ghoul King, where you get rerolls of 1s, or maybe even rerolls in general. But here you're going to have these additions if you're attacking a monster. So that's pretty interesting. This one by itself is really very viable to have as maybe a component in your death list. I could totally see using this. You have a character, a hero here, 2 units of Crypt Horrors, which is essentially 6 Crypt Horrors. not that hard to do. I'm sure most people who have any kind of crypt horrors probably have at least one, perhaps two units. It's not unreasonable. And then a unit of ghouls. You could have this as be the core of a reasonably good sized Age of Sigmar army, more of the small to medium sized type games, along with your abhorrent Ghoul King, whether it's mounted or an infantry version. But either way, that's not a bad size. I would say that this is maybe a faction, a element of your army, but it's a small enough one to get some pretty good and pretty decent bonuses that I would absolutely consider this if I was putting this and marrying it maybe even to the greater death list. With a larger series of forces from other elements of the faction. But certainly as a standalone, it's some decent bonuses, nothing game-breaking, nothing outrageous, and certainly you have a couple of extra things here. You have the ability to have that battery restoration to get additional crypt horrors. If you have your abhorrent Ghoul King, you get some bonuses there. And just let's take a look at that real quick, because these are going to point to those when we as we go through this. Let's take a look at the new big boy on the block, which is the Ghoul King on a zombie dragon, and he has some special things that he brings to the table. We talked about this in the previous video. The first one is, some adjustments here. We have the Ghoul King stats on the zombie dragon, but here's the ability for the Ghoul King on a zombie dragon can summon in as a mechanic, as a command ability, not as a spell, an abhorrent a courtier model. So if you're using this conjunction with any of these battalions, there's a whole bunch of different courtiers. In this case, it's the crypt horror version of the courtier or courtier, which is I think the haunter. In any case, that gives you the ability to do it within 3 inches of a table edge. That's what a lot of these bringing in new units can do. So it's not necessarily within the combat, but as you saw with the courtier's ability, he can expand without any proximity issues. Crypt horror models that could be anywhere. They could already be in combat, right up in your enemy unit's grill, and you can add in 1 or 2 or more if you roll really well, full models onto that unit. So that's pretty interesting. So let's just establish that. We looked at that yesterday, or earlier in the week, I should say. And then in a little bit of an adjustment with the Ghoul King on the zombie dragon. If the zombie dragon's a little bit tougher in combat, you should know. And excuse me, not zombie dragon, the Terrorgeist. Its Death Shriek is a little bit better handled in the respect that it's more likely to cause wounds because it has more of a minimum, but it's less likely to cause a huge amount of wounds like it did last time, where it could actually do, you could score, if you rolled potentially, 15 to 18, you could be wiping out, models, heroes right off the bat, or taking out large chunks of units. In this case, you have a greater chance to do something, but less of a great chance to do a dramatic amount or a tremendous amount, you can drink now, of wounds. I think it's a good trade-off because it also has some other abilities where, if you roll, I guess if you roll 6, with its claws, you do additional damage. I think the the Terrorgeist is actually more balanced now. And I know that's amazing and horrible to hear from me because I'm the king of anti-balance, of imbalance. But I think it's actually a better profile in some respects because that you're going to cause something, but maybe you're not going to liquefy entire units. In any case, it's tougher in hand-to-hand combat. In close combat, it's got a better save. There's some better factors here that I think I like that gives it more versatility as opposed to just being a screaming platform, which a lot of people cried about, ironically. So here, its command ability was, and it has this unholy vitality spell, which I think is something that we should definitely talk about, because this one it is a spell, it is summonable, it is unbindable, but you can cast it on a value of 6, and if you do that, you pick a unit from the Flesh Eater Courts within 18 inches, and then it says roll a dice each time the model from the unit you pick suffers a wound or a mortal wound, and on a 5 or 6 it's ignored. This is in addition to any saves you get. So on a 5 or 6, it's kind of like having that old school ward save. But again, these stack. All right, so you have to understand that they've already FAQ'd that these things stack. So you will be getting your regular saves, and then you will get these ignoring wound saves, or rather, you probably get these at the very tail end. But it's nice. It gives some longevity to some of your units, especially if you have units that are kind of crunchy, like ghouls and like large packs of ghouls. That's probably what you'd want to put them on. They have basically no armor, no saves, this is a way to give them some kind of longer lasting effect. You can't stack it with other abilities or Mystic Shield stuff, but it's nice. It's a nice thing. I guess that's debatable whether you can. This is really not a save. It's more of an ignore. In any case, the command ability is really what I want to talk about. So if he uses this ability, and this is a command ability, and mind you, this is something we got to talk about because there is some expansion and flexibility on those command abilities that we'll see shortly. Here you could set up an entire new unit of Crypt Horrors or Crypt Flayers. And this is on the table edge. So again, you're going to probably want to use the Ghoul King mounted in some capacity, so that you can. And I'm not sure if they did that. Where they actually allow for the extra. They don't have the extra War Scroll here. There is another War Scroll with just the Ghoul King that's in the app. You don't see it on the website though because they don't show it because this little bugger is not an individual he's not sold by himself. So I don't know if apparently you can't get it. And I have it on the app. And I guess I could verbally talk about it, but I'm not going to bother right now. Go ahead and look at it. You'll see. But that's important because again, these things are going to stack and they're going to get more and more complicated. All right. This is the attendance at court. And again, this is a little bit fuzzy because this is on a dual picture. So I'm just going to kind of zoom it in a little bit. I'm sorry if it's fuzzy. I barely can read it myself. This one has a Ghoul Haunter Courtier, which we just saw, and 2 units of Crypt Horror. So this is actually a smaller version of what we just saw. So the previous version was the Abattoir, and this one is the Attendance at Court. So again, this one doesn't include the Crypt Ghouls themselves. So in this case, if you just have this, you can re-roll failed hit rolls for units of Crypt Horrors from this court, even if they're not within 15 inches of an abhorrent Ghoul King from your army. All right, so the proximity limitation that you get for re-rolling failed hit rolls is removed, but only for the ones that you have that's part of this court. Now, the way I would look at it is if you bring in new units, they're not part of this court. They're separate. They've been called up in some other capacity. Obviously using a ability mechanic or even potentially a command ability, but they're not already part of this battalion war scroll. So again, you would have to classify these guys as a new unit, not part of any of your battalion war scrolls. They've just been summoned or called up in some capacity with this special ability, this loyal subjects ability. So they wouldn't get. They wouldn't get this ability if you got new units from the command abilities. But the ones that you deployed initially, the Crypt Haunter Courtier and the 2 Crypt Horrors that you signified as the attendants at court, they would get this. And they could be anywhere on the battlefield, which is cool. So you don't have to worry about those guys. But that's going to be a lot to keep track of. I'm going to say that a lot. Even if I'm like a broken record with that, there's a good reason for it. Okay, so Steward to the King. If your general is a Ghoul King, and I think it should be and it would be, there's certainly reasons why you would have these guys here as maybe part of, maybe you'd have Arkin or Nefrada, and Nefrada would be a great idea because she can be flying on these guys with her special power. Or even a Gash. You could theoretically have something else be your general and have these be smaller areas of your list. But again, if you're trying to stick to and maximize the capability of the Flesh Eaters, you're going to have a Ghoul King of some kind be your main man, your general. And so if you're within 10 inches, if your general is within 10 inches of this battalion's Crypt Haunter during your hero phase, you can use 2 command abilities that phase, and can even use the same command ability twice. That's great. That's incredible. I dare say that brings things to the very highest levels of the tremendous meter. Why? Because you can use 2 command abilities, and you could use the same one twice. If a lot of these command abilities are bringing in more models, bringing in more units. All right, yes, they're on the table edge. They're in different areas of the table. Fine, but still consider that. That's quite substantial to have this unit present. Is imbuing the ability, if it's in range, of your Ghoul King general to double up on his command abilities. That's incredible. You don't see that very often. You usually only have one, and you have to make choices. Now you don't have to make choices. Now you could bring in maybe the ability to use the Inspiring Presence if you really needed to, for say a huge cluster of Crypt Ghouls, which is probably the only really large unit that you're going to have in this. Everything else is going to be clusters of bigger multi-wound models. But in the flesh eaters, there's only the only thing that you have that's single wounds is the ghouls, the regular ghouls. So yeah, there might be some reason to utilize that. But these, still, that might not be a really big draw anyway, because they all have 10 bravery, so it's not going to be that big of a deal. But again, I can't stress how crazy that is and how much of a bonus and benefit that is. Okay, Dead Watch, and again, this is thankfully this is a little bit closer. I wish the person who'd taken the pictures initially for the other two had made a close up as opposed to a side by side of one page. In any case, Dead Watch. 1 Crypt Infernal Courtier and 3 units of Crypt Flayers. Now, there's 3 models in each of those Crypt Flayer units. So let's take a quick look at those. So let's see. It's the Infernal Courtier or Courtier. So forgive me if I'm doing that wrong. Okay, so here's the Courtier. This is basically the kind of Vargeist wings on a Crypt Horror body combination, and his ability, he's Muster Royal Guard. So again, this is one of those situations where you can roll 6 dice and you can add Crypt Flayers onto existing Flayer units that are within 10 inches. So you're going to have 2 of these. So you have the potential to roll, to add 2, on average between, well, you're going to have 3 of these Crypt Flayer units. So if you roll really well, you can pad each one of these guys, which just makes them more, the longevity of them is that much more. It might be, there's certainly some challenge to keep them all within 10 inches of this guy, but I'm sure you'll have at least 2 of them. And, again, you're padding the ranks with these abilities. So that's the combination to achieve that. So yeah, let's take a look at the ability. The Abhorrent King's Own. So this ability is in your hero phase. You can make a pile-in move and attack with each Dead Watch unit as if they were in the combat phase. Yeah, I looked through this before. This is one of those where, it's, again, things start getting holy cow batshit crazy because, there are command abilities that allow you to pile in and attack in the combat phase. This is that much better in my opinion. And here's why, okay? All right, in your hero phase, you can pile in for each one. You're not dictating a single unit. Like the Vampire Lord on a Zombie Dragon, I think, has this, if I'm correct. Or no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It's the Van Hale's Dance from the Necromancer is where you can pile in and basically you get an extra round of attacks. You get your own and then you get another one. And this is better because you're not signifying a single unit, and you could have multiple Necromancers casting Van Hale's Dance. But in this case, it's just these 3 Crypt Flayer units, or any combination of these 3, and they're not just doing it in the combat phase. Let's say they've managed to, they were charged in the previous turn, or you charged, you're already in combat in the previous turn. When your turn comes up, the hero phase kicks in. This is not a command ability. This is an inherent ability of this battalion. Any of these 4 units, the character and the 3 Flayer units, which are 3 Crypt Horror level powers, they're actually a little more powerful. I think they're the 6-wound ones. They can, not in the combat phase, in the hero phase. It does not prevent them from doing the further attacking in the combat phase. And also, if they're doing it in the hero phase, they're doing it out of order. They're not getting attacked back. They basically can further pile in. Now, the reason why it's further pile in is because if they're already within 3 inches, they're already in combat. But there may be a couple of these models that may not have been within range in the previous combat turn, because it's unlikely that you're not going to already be in combat in some capacity, because you're not going to pile in unless you're within range. But here, it's only a 3-inch move. But let's also take a look at this. You're getting that extra pile in to get a couple extra guys that may not have been within range, to get closer to the nearest enemy model, and then everybody's attacking. So if these guys are all already in range, they're all getting all their series of attacks. Yeah, that's exactly. And let's say it's in the hero phase, right? You could have cast the Van Hale's Dance just prior to this on one of these units. They're going to get an extra pile in as well when they pile in. I don't know if it's in the combat phase. I'll have to take a look at that, where it would still only happen in the close combat phase for Van Hale's Dance. So that may not be one of those stacking situations. I hope it's that case, because it seems a little crazy. But yeah, that's it's at a turn. You're going to be causing casualties. You're not going to be getting. Nobody's going to be activating any enemy units to attack back at you because it's in your hero phase. It's an ability in your hero phase. Then when you get to your actual combat phase, and then you activate a unit, you can get an extra attack probably from one of these if you activate it first to do even that much more damage before your opponent's going to get a chance to fire back with their activation when you alternate in combat. That's crazy. Let's take a look at the Crypt Haunter. Actually, no, the Crypt Flayers. These are the new guys. New combination, basically your old Vargeist kit, but with a Crypt Horror body. And these are they're not the stronger ones. They're still the 4-wound guys. But they have a little bit of an extra scream that, they can fly. They're flying Cryptars. So that's cool. Yeah, that's basically it. That's the best way to describe them. Okay, so getting back to this, that's nice. And that's not even a huge a battalion. We're not talking about a whole lot of models here. We're talking about a hero model and 9 of these flayers. So 3 kits of the flayers from the Crypt Horror Vargeist set. Yeah, but again, that'll add up when we talk about the big thing. So this is the Ghoulish King, Vlagorescues. I hope I didn't butcher that. Ghoulish Host. This is a nice one. And this is a big one in and of itself, okay? But this is, I think this might be one of the subs for the other ones. I don't know. This might be one of those standalones that's not even a part of it. Let's find out. Let's go back. We haven't gone that far out of the way. The Flesh Eater Court. No, this is not included in this massive one. So this is a standalone by itself, which is probably one of those fairly big ones, but we'll see what the abilities are for this. Okay, so what is this comprised of? A Abhorrent Ghoul King on a Terrorgeist, of course. 1 Courtier, which is something that the Ghoul King, by the way, can summon in. Oh no, I'm wrong. It's the Ghoul King on a zombie dragon. So no. A 1 unit of Crypt Ghouls. So I'm sure it's going to be a pretty sizable one. 1 unit of Crypt Horrors. 1 unit of Crypt Flayers. Not that hard to imagine. You could have for a reasonably mid-sized game. You could have maybe a unit of 20 or 30 Ghouls. 1 Vargulf again. Maybe a unit of 3 Horrors. You could certainly do more and 3 Crypt Flayers. And then that's pretty reasonable. It's not an outlandishly sized force. I'd say it's more of a smallish to mid-sized force. It's kind of like a little bit like a starter box, a get started box that we've seen. So that's what I would put this in the category in size of, like the Archon, the Black, with his horde of 10 skeletons and 10 Black Knights, or any of the other get started kits you might see. Okay, so here let's take a look at the abilities. Banquet Fit for a King. So his ability is at the end of the hero phase. Roll a dice for each unit from this battalion that is within 3 inches of the enemy unit. Okay, and on a 6, you can pile in and attack with that unit as if it were the combat phase. Again, you're getting a whole round of combat out of turn, and no retaliation until the combat phase kicks in. That's great. It's any of the ones that are part of this battalion, and yes, it's only on a 6, so it's not automatic. So it's a much rarer situation than the previous one. But hey, still, it's one of those bonuses. When it kicks in, it could really be crazy. It adds in any additional attacks. We're talking about an additional round of attacks. So we're not talking about with rerolls, with accelerated quantity. In your Crypt Ghouls, for instance, they may get 4 attacks. And then it could be argued, depending on what the situation is, whether Van Hell's Dance allows them to get an additional one, because it does say as if you were in the combat phase. And that thing, I think, is only combat phase worded, but we'll take a look at that. Martial Excellence, Well Drilled on Parade. Okay, so you in your hero phase, 1 unit in the Ghoulish Host that is within 10 inches of their Vargulf Courtier. Again, has to be the one that's in this battalion, not because you have a Vargulf Courtier. Can immediately reform around one of its models. That model must stay where it is, but each other model in the unit can move up to 6 inches so long as it does not end this move within 3 inches of the enemy. This unit can still move in the ensuing movement phase as normal. I was seeing more and more of these types of abilities. I saw this with the Morgant. Is it more? I forget what it was. It was the Mortis Engine Get Started set, which had some hex wraiths and some spirit hosts, where you could have the hex wraiths or the spirit hosts on any other side of the board from your mortis engine and reposition them close to the mortis engine, which is a huge amount of movement, and you could basically pull it out of combat. It's one of the best war scrolls I've seen, battalion scrolls I've seen. In this case, you have an ability to kind of just reorganize your these models. There's also this. I think I saw this also in the Seraphon, the Lizardmen, where they could do this with some of their Saurus. I forget if it's the Temple Guard. I think it might be the Temple Guard, but they can do that. Where look, it's not going to come into play or make really be a great big deal. But when you consider the fact that it's not part of movement, it's added movement. You're doing it in the hero phase. You can reorganize some of your guys, okay, and then it doesn't say that look, if they could be in combat, and you could pull guys technically out of combat, out of range of your opponents, and then make a move in the movement phase. Consider that flexibility of movement. Yeah, in a clustered board, it might be impossible, especially once you start getting stuck into fights. If you might not be able to get out of that 3-inch arc because there might be a lot of enemies near you. But consider if there's one cluster of fighting and you want to get something else in, and you want to move these guys off to another direction, befuddling your opponent, doing something that they're not predicting. They think that you're there, and the only way to get out of that combat is either through attrition or through retreat. Now you have a means to pull guys out, put them where you want to, and then make a regular move. In addition to that, the tactical capabilities there are tremendous. So yes, go ahead and drink. I love that. Anything that can cause your opponent to really change their game and change up what you think is obviously going to happen. Hey, these guys are now fighting, is a bonus and a benefit, and it is to your advantage. And again, this is not the only army that can do this, but it's maybe something that we may seem that's more common over the course of time. But I think that's these types of special movement or movement enhancers or non-standard movement powers are becoming more common, but I've seen a bunch of them now in the Death faction, and they really give the Death faction much more mobility than people are giving the Death faction credit. All right, Ghoul Patrol, of course, a gas courtier and 3 crypt ghoul units. All right, so let's first take a look at the abilities. In your first movement phase, you must set up all of these units wholly within 6 inches of any edge of the battlefield. Whoa, really? And more than 9 inches for enemy models. This counts as their move for that turn. You get to set these guys up to the side. This is like an ambushing type unit now. So, but it is within 6 inches. It's not anywhere on the battlefield like a lot of these other mechanics where they can pop in from the celestial realm or dig up from underneath the ground like miners, or just pop out of the trees like chameleon skinks. This one it has to be a table edge. And it has to be more than 9 inches away from enemy models, and they can't move. So the downside is that they're going to be there. They're going to get the attention of your opponent, but they can charge. They can't move. So it's going to be a long charge if you're within 9 inches. What you would use this for? Attacking potentially or enemy heroes, going after war machines, cannons, and the like that are in the backfield. Also, this could be good for positioning these guys to take and hold objectives, depending on what your scenario is. But the flexibility is pretty amazing. There's a lot of units here, though, so that more than 9 inches away from enemy models is going to be an issue, okay? And it has to be in your first movement phase. So doing it on your opponent's table edge is going to be mitigated. It's going to be minimized. You're probably not going to be able to do that with this fairly large group because although it only has 1 gas courtier, it's 3 units of crypt ghouls, and those are minimum 10 models each. Those are your standard ghouls. So it's very likely they'll be placed on the side, the short table edges, unless you get lucky and some area is underdeployed on your opponent's table edge. But basically you have to start the game off in your first move. Oh, and it's wait a second, it's in your first movement phase. So let's also look at this. It's not in the deployment of the game. It's in your first movement phase. So let's say you don't get the first turn. It does open up some additional abilities now that I think about it, because additional flexibility, because your opponent who starts within his or her deployment zone is going to, in many cases, if they get the first turn, move further into the board. That could open up zones to bring this battalion in, because it's not part of deployment. It's part of your first movement phase. So you may, if you're going to use this, you may want to take the second slot if you have the option and not go first, because it'll give you some more options. Of course, it'll also mean that if your opponent knows that you've brought it, that they may expand out and really limit your capabilities. You know, move some guys so that those 9-inch arcs, those 18-inch essentially range are all covered, which could further limit you. So it is a trade-off. Drawn to battle, the next ability. So in this one, in each of your hero phases, you roll a dice for each of the Crypt Ghoul units in this battalion. Again, it's this battalion, not any Crypt Ghoul units you have from any other battalions, that is on the battlefield, and add that many models to the unit. I love it. Not only do you do it in your hero phase, you do it in each of your hero phases. So each of these Crypt Ghoul units, all right, that come in from this battalion, from the Ghoul Patrol, grow. And that's apart from any other growth ability that they may get. So if you have even just 10 of them, you're getting a die 6 every hero phase that unit is alive. It's great. Now, let's take a look at what the Ghoul, what is it? It's the Ghast Courtier can do, because if my memory serves, he's a grower. So the Crypt Ghoul, the Crypt Ghast Courtier, where is he? Nope, that's not it. It is, let's see. Oh, of course. Let's go down this way. Sorry, I kind of messed that one up. All right, so there's the Crypt Ghouls. I think it's on the Crypt Ghouls themselves that the Crypt Ghast Courtier is. Yes, it is. All right, so his ability, he's a trophy hunter. Muster men-at-arms, that's the ability I was looking for. So you roll. Now, this guy comes with this battalion, and you may have others. This is not a battalion-specific ability. You may have other Crypt Ghasts. Courtiers on the battlefield. If they're close enough, they could do this to these units. In each of your hero phases, roll 6 dice for each Ghast Courtier. For each roll of 2 or more, add 1 model to a unit of Crypt Ghouls from your army that is within 10 inches, and you can distribute as you wish. So in addition to that battalion ability, your Courtier is going to have an ability to add, and it's only on a 2. So unless the likelihood is you're going to get, like, say, 4 or 5 of these guys. On average, you should get 5. So let's say you get 4. So you get 4 from these, and then the battalion ability is giving each one of those 3 Ghoul units, die 6. So let's say an average of 3. You're going to pad each of those units on average. I would say 4, 5 maybe. So you're going to get another 15 Ghouls just with the battalion and the Courtier's inherent abilities. That's great. That is amazing. All right, so let's get back to this. That's the Ghoul Patrol. Not huge, but it can be, because it's at least 30 Crypt Ghouls or more, and the 1 Courtier. The King's Ghouls. Okay, this is including 1 Crypt Ghast Courtier, which we just saw, 2 units of Crypt Ghouls, which you just saw, and 1 unit of Crypt Horrors. So what's the special abilities? Again, we're not talking about an outrageous number of models, but once we get to that big battalion, it's going to add up. So we're talking about 1 unit of Crypt Horrors is going to be at least 3 models. 2 units of Crypt Ghouls, at least 10 each. They're going to have to be more if they want that accelerator, but that's how many. The Guardians of the Court, tasked with protecting the lair of their master, the King's Ghouls would rather fight to the last than see it ransacked by intruders. You do not need to take battle shock tests for King's Ghoul units that are within your territory. All right, when they say your territory, I know some people have asked about this, because I saw this with the Sons of Bahamut, the Giant Battalion, where they get, if I remember correctly, they get rerolls for enemy units that are not in their territory, I think it was. It's whatever the deployment side of the board is, that is yours or not yours. So the board is divided up. That's your territory for the game. So if these guys are in the side of the board that you started the game off in, they don't need to take battle shock. That's pretty good. Now, 2 units of Crypt Ghouls, yeah, these are abilities to grow these guys, so it does kind of benefit you to kind of take them at smaller numbers, because there's so many ways to grow them. But there might be large numbers of them, but at least you're not going to go and lose them through battle shock attrition within this battalion. The King's Ghouls will hurl themselves boldly into the foe in order to pin them down and prevent our enemies from breaking through to their territory and beyond. If any King Ghouls units are within 3 inches of an enemy unit in your hero phase, you can make a 6-inch pile-in move with any models in that unit as if it were the combat phase. Once again, fighting out of order. All right. And here's the crazy part. It's not, you don't get the pile in from 6 inches away if the entire unit is within 6 inches away. It does clarify, which is what, the clarification of how pile in works. The basic ability, unless it says otherwise, is that you have to be within 3 inches. Let's say you're already an enemy in combat with from a previous turn. You were charged or you charge, and the units are still models from those units. In this case, you're going to get a large pile in. The reason why that's important is because you may have elements of a larger cluster unit, a large unit of ghouls that weren't able to get in the previous turn because there's too many bodies in the backfield. Now you get, not only do you get to get pile in, but they can pile in 6 inches, which is great. That's more bodies to be brought to bear, and it's in the hero phase. So they still will get their attacks in when it comes into the combat phase. Awesome. And it's not an absolutely massive battalion in and of itself. It's kind of a smallish battalion, which is nice because you can mix and match these. These are not gigantic battalion scrolls. When you add them all up to that one big one, then it becomes just absolutely gigantic. Okay, so this is the 2-shot with somebody's cat or dog here. I don't know where this came from, but I wish they had done this and divided it up so we could get a little closer. But we're going to move past because that's what this is. I clipped it out so we could see it a little closer. All right, and I'm going to try and do it where we can still see it and still be able to see it. I'm sorry, it's a little fuzzy, but this is the best I could get. This is an Abhorrent Ghoul King on a Terrorgeist or an Abhorrent Ghoul King on a Zombie Dragon. So we have an option here. And a lot of people are really very positive about the Zombie Dragon version of this one. But I think there's use for either one of them. And then 2 to 6 Abhorrent Ghoul Kings. Oh, no. Guess what? Buckle in. The secondary market for Ghoul King models has just skyrocketed because you could have one of the riders, but now you also have to have at least one extra infantry Ghoul King because you have between 2 and 6 of these guys. Now, that's great. So each time a courtier in your army uses an ability to call forth additional Flesh Eater Court models, add 1 model to one eligible unit if the courtier is within 10 inches of a royal family model when the ability is used. What does that mean? You have minimum here of 3 models in this royal family. You have the Ghoul King riding a Zombie Dragon or a Terrorgeist, and at least 2, but as much as 6 Ghoul Kings. That's a lot of heroes. Those infantry Ghoul Kings. And they could be mounted as well. You could have a 3rd or a 4th, or you have a whole legion of these guys, 7, Ghoul Kings mounted on Zombie Dragons or Terrorgeists. But I don't think anybody's going to be doing that. Somebody, I shouldn't say that. Somebody's going to be doing that. There are people that are more insane even than me. But yeah, the way I interpret it is you probably, with just the models from these 2 kits, you could have the 2 infantry Ghoul Kings and then the 2 large mounted guys. In this case, let's just say you have the 2 infantry guys. What it says is if you're within range of any of these dudes, when a courtier uses the ability, you get bonuses. You get an additional 1. That's great, especially if there's multiple courtiers, because and we're talking about Vargolf courtiers, for example, bringing in models. And let's see if we could it's only if the courtier is within 10 inches, not if the unit that you're bringing in is within 10 inches. The courtier uses the ability, and if they're within 10 inches of any of these royal family models, because these are individual models, these are not units, they get to add an additional model on whatever they bring forth, whether they're a battery on an existing unit of, say, Crypt Horrors, for example, or if they're bringing in a new unit on a table edge. All right, so then there's summon Sycophant. This is a command ability. This is one of the crazy ones that I was talking about earlier. There's a couple of these crazy ones. Okay, let's see. If your general was chosen from this battalion and your royal family currently has fewer than 6 Abhorrent Ghoul King models, so don't go too nuts with this because you'll lose this ability. You'll have to sacrifice some guys in the game. Your general can use this command ability instead of any other he can normally use. If he does so, or she, set up a new abhorrent Ghoul King within 3 inches of any edge of the battlefield and more than 9 inches from enemy models. It cannot move in the subsequent movement phase, and it counts as part of the royal family for the rest of the battle. So, if you start off with a Ghoul King riding one of these monsters, Zombie Dragon or Terrorgeist, and let's say you have 2 infantry Ghoul Kings, you have less than the 6 that this command ability works. Instead of using the command ability of that as long as he's the general, if the main guy is your general, you get to summon, again, it's not right up in your grill, it's off to the table edge, and you have to be away from the enemies, a new Ghoul King, and it can be a Ghoul King riding either a Zombie Dragon or a Terrorgeist, doesn't say that it's not, and it's part of this battalion. So say you take casualties from this battalion, all right, you're still gaining the ability to get other hero level models that can enhance the courtier's battery ability to bring in an additional model when they use those abilities. Meaning, just to clarify, so that I'm not like speaking in fumbling in my words, when the courtier brings in new units or grows units, this battalion, if you're within range, it to be within 10 inches of one of those courtiers, that courtier gets an additional body, additional model to add. This command ability gets you not only more guys onto the table, which is certainly, it's a command ability, and combine that with the ability to potentially get 2 command abilities in a turn, and now you even see how crazy that then can become. But this now can bring in an additional guy, so you have more models in this battalion that gives that capability to the courtier to get to grow. So again, you got to keep track of these things. It's going to be hard to keep record keep. I hope that wasn't too complicated or too confusing. All right, Royal Menagerie. Okay, so 3 or more units chosen from the following: Terrorgeists or Zombie Dragons. So this is, look, not everybody has multiples. I have one of each, a Terrorgeist and a Zombie Dragon. One of them is modeled so that it could be either a Zombie Dragon or a Terrorgeist. And then I have another model that I was converting from a Reaper Zombie Dragon, and I had actually thought about maybe selling it, getting rid of it, because I just, with the Terrorgeist and the Zombie Dragon not having in the Ghoul courts the ability to summon, I thought maybe I would give it up. But no, I'm not going to do that now, because you have to have 3 of these guys, and I want to have the potential to do that. Forward, my pretties, at their master's command, vast wings and furl. Okay, forget. We're not going to leave out the fluff. If your general is an abhorrent Ghoul King, and why wouldn't it be? Then in your hero phase, you can make a 6-inch move with any models from a Royal Menagerie that is within 15 inches of him. They can still move in their ensuing movement phase as normal. That's great. Now, imagine you have a Terrorgeist or a Zombie Dragon. Within 15 inches is not unreasonable. It's not like some of the ability that it's, I think, on, like, for instance, Terrorgeist, where it gets a healing ability if it's within 5 inches, I think, of a Ghoul King of any kind, which is nice. It gets a healing ability to restore some of its lost wounds. This is an ability within 15 inches. That's a good 30 inches in either direction from your Ghoul King, and it has to be the Ghoul King General, which is, again, you're making trade-offs. You can't stack all of these abilities, but in this case, if the Royal Menagerie Ghoul King is your general. No, I'm wrong. It's got to be it's not from the Royal Menagerie. It's any Ghoul King general. I take that back. There's a lot of potential there. It could be any Ghoul King general. It gets an extra move. That's all these extra moves. Again, let's not forget that if you're within 6 inches of any models with this abhorrent Ghoul King, then excuse me, you have to be 15 inches, and then you can make a 6-inch move. That's a 6-inch bonus move in addition to the 12 or 14-inch flying that a Terrorgeist or a Zombie Dragon will have. Now, these are the Ghoul King, the Flesh Eater Court version Terrorgeist or Zombie Dragons. It doesn't say that specifically that it has to be that specific one, but I would imagine that's the case. I guess you could make a case that it could be either one, but I would think you're losing some of the synergistic benefits if you take a Death Faction non-Flesh Eater Court version of these Warscrolls. I wouldn't do that. It's just easier to keep track of, and you're gaining the benefits with the various proximities and other command abilities and such. Okay, so Monstrous Ensemble. When massed together, the creatures of the Royal Menagerie gain mutual benefit from the dark energies. Models from the Royal Menagerie that are within 5 inches of another model from the Royal Menagerie heal 1 wound in your hero phase in addition to any other wounds that they heal. Now consider this. If you have a Ghoul King riding along with these guys from the Royal Menagerie, and you have your base ability that allows you to heal because there's a Ghoul King nearby, you heal with, I think, the Terrorgeist, I think, has that. This is the ability, if they're close enough to each other, if they're running in tandem, if you have 2 Terrorgeists, 2 Zombie Dragons, a Zombie Dragon and a Terrorgeist, whatever, they gain an extra wound that they heal. And this in the when massed together models, it doesn't say, it's in the hero phase. So it's just expanded healing. Okay, moving on. That's great. It's a situational thing, but flights of these guys is certainly not going to be something that you're not going to see, especially with these rules. The Royal Mordants. This is one of the larger, well, they're not larger ones, but this is a Vargulf Courtier, Crypt Horrors, 1 unit of Crypt Horrors, 1 unit of Crypt Flayers, and 1 unit of Ghouls. So what's their martial excellence? Well drilled, and we already talked about what the Vargulf can do. It pads these units. You can choose to add to the Horrors or the Flayers and such. All right. Well drilled on parade. Okay, fine. In your hero phase, 1 unit in the Royal Mordants within 10 inches of their Vargulf Courtier, so not all of them, one of them, can immediately reform around one of its models. Again, this is one of those just picking up and moving to a different part of practically the table. Not all the way across the table, but it gives you that reform ability to maybe to pull something out of combat or something that was out of position to get into combat and didn't get a free move. So if it's within 10 inches of their Vargulf Courtier, in this particular battalion, they can reform, all right, around it. The models must stay, that model must stay where it is, so you have to reposition it around one of its models. So you can have a model on the outside of, say, for instance, a Crypt Ghoul unit. Say you have a unit of 30 Crypt Ghouls. That covers a pretty reasonable amount of real estate. So one of the guys on the other side of that unit, you can reposition all of your models around that unit. All right, that model must stay where it is. It doesn't move, okay? But each of the other models can move up to 6 inches. So essentially that cluster, as long as that one guy doesn't move, he could be like the tail of the snake. Not that you're going to have a line like, like the old, lines of zombies or stupid stuff like that. Although, maybe somebody might do that. It's certainly legal in the game. But you could move that cluster out where there's a collage kind of in a teardrop shape. And this one anchor guy that everybody reformed around has to stay where he is. Great. And then as long as nobody's within 3 inches of the enemy when it's done, that unit can still move. So when the movement phase, that's in the hero phase. When the movement phase happens, that whole unit, that now teardrop looking unit potentially, can now move. You could reposition from the middle of the board to like another quadrant of the board, realistically, and even charge. It could take you out of combat or put you in a position to get into a combat you want to be into. It's pretty good, pretty reasonable. Then we're back to the Flesh Eater Court. So that's all of them. Now let's take a look at just how crazy this is when you look at this battalion war scroll, a collection of all of these, and how big of an army that is. It's tremendous, absolutely tremendous. The ability to have so many additional pile-ins, the ability to get rerolls, the ability to battery units, to bring in new units, to bring in units in different parts of the battlefield, to reposition units into other sections of a battlefield. This is a gigantic battalion war scroll because, again, it comprises of these fairly small to mid-sized battalions. When you add them up, they're an absolutely huge army. The Royal Family, the Tenants of Court, the Death Watch, the Abattoir, the Ghoul Patrol, the King's Ghouls, the Royal Mordants, the Royal Menagerie. And let's revisit what you can do. All units from the Flesh Eater Court, that's all of these battalions combined, that are summoned by models including any new Flesh Eater Court units that are summoned by models from the Flesh Eater Court. So I don't think you're going to have anything else in this army list that you're playing other than the stuff from these Flesh Eater Courts. That's just a lot of models. And hey, bless you. God bless you if you got all the models to be able to qualify. I don't. And again, I have an obscenely big death army. They can make a move in your hero phase as if it was the movement phase, and it doesn't exclude them from being able to make a move. It's a full move. That means, you know, you could potentially charge. Well, no, you can't. You can't charge. It's the charge phase. I can't believe I actually said that. That was a stupid thing. Sorry, but yes, now you have the ability to move, a full move, even potentially a run, and it's your turn. So you're going to get the first. You're going to get the charges, and think about it. Your first turn, you could move this entire collage across the battlefield in your hero phase. It's not a command ability to do this. It's an inherent ability. And then you'll still be able to get potentially charges. You could get right up in your face and have this entire army just swarm over your enemy turn one, potentially. Because a lot of these things provide you with 6-inch additional moves. So you're getting that 6-inch move, and you're running potentially as well. All right, when you take this move. So they're not very fast. Some of these can fly. There's clearly some of these things could get right up in your opponents in turn one. If not turn one, very easily turn two. Maneuver exactly where you want them. And then let's also take into consideration that if you use the abilities of some of these units to fully reposition, pull units out of combat that they're already in within 3 inches, make a move, and then they can make a full move now in the hero phase, and then make a full move in the movement phase, and then a charge move. The idea of these subunits to be able to reposition themselves is incredible. Okay, so Dark Master. We talked about this before. We're going to talk about it again. If your general is an important Ghoul King from this battalion, and he will be, because it'll be from one of the guys in one of these, he knows the command abilities found on the Flesh Eater Court Warscrolls and battles and battalions included in the Flesh Eater Court. He knows all of them. He's got all of the command abilities, all. So you have all the capabilities, and he can use up to 3 different command abilities each turn. 3. Okay, so some of these command abilities allow you to pile in and get an entire series of attacks in your hero phase. Let me say that again. There are command abilities that you can use that allow you to pile in and get a full round of attacks for more than 1 unit of each of these sub-War Scroll battalions in your command phase, as if it were a combat phase. This allows you to do that 3 times. And there are some, if I have to look back and see if the synergies work, if the wording works, of those sub-command abilities that allow you to do it twice. So you consider how fast this battalion can be and how crushing it could be in terms of getting its first strike or surgical strike where and when you want to use it, and the movement capability. This is a gigantic War Scroll. And I'm absolutely sure we're going to see more of these with other releases, with other future books. We're going to see, I'm confident that we're going to see this. We're seeing it once, we're going to see it again. It's like anything else, the law of probability. If there's a potential that it can happen over the course of time, that becomes a certainty. I feel very certain that we're going to see more of this with other factions, that we're going to see bigger War Scrolls and bigger collections of War Scrolls. This was a great set of battalion War Scrolls in that each one individually used or in one and by itself or in combination maybe with one other one can make a reasonably good-sized Age of Sigmar army list. And then you have this absolutely massive one where you can combine a whole mess of your list. Put them on the field. It's the kind of thing that you would see against the army of Nagash, or against the host of Arcan, these huge mega battles, where I mean the idea of having the ability to have this on the table is going to include a lot of models and a lot of record keeping and a lot of battery abilities of building, of restoring models, adding models, padding models, new units that are appearing in different places. I could see this being incredibly overwhelming. There's not a lot of shooting in this army. It's just a lot of bodies, and a lot of bodies restoring themselves and coming back onto the table or repositioning themselves on the table. It's very fast moving, and it can be pretty. Overwhelming. It's not unbeatable. It's not undefeatable. Certainly, Don't panic. Don't freak out. I know there's people that see these things and go, oh, no fun. Oh, it's overpowered. Oh, too bad. Look how many models that is. Look how many models. These are 8 battalions. Each one of those battalions is from half the size of a get started box to a full size. So we're talking probably in the neighborhood of like 200 wounds here. You know, it could be 150 wounds, but probably 200 wounds if you use minimum unit sizes of like 10 of the ghouls, because there's a lot of these units that have and think about the cost too. You're talking about a whole lot of the Vargeist Crypt Horror kits that have 3 guys in each of them. In order to accommodate all of these, I haven't done the math. I would love for somebody out there watching, if you're still around at the end of this video, to take the time to calculate how many models, just using the unit minimums, you would take to have this on the table at the start. And let's keep in mind that the Ghoul Patrol doesn't deploy initially. You bring it in on your first movement turn. So let's still calculate that that's part of this. And then let's also consider that after you get that number, if anybody's willing to do this, you get a cookie. If anybody's willing to do this, that you're going to need some additional models of all these different types for things that are going to be brought into the table. Let's not even talk about spell summoning, just for the mechanical summoning. You're going to need a lot of stuff. But I don't even want to think about that necessarily. I just want to think about what the minimum army composition would be to field this full Flesh Eater court. Let me know. I would love it for somebody to go do that, because I don't have the time to do it right now. And there you go. There you have it. That is the new series of Warscroll battalions that have been released, that are part of the Flesh Eater Court battle tome. Go get it. Have at it. This is a wonderful addition to the Death faction. It really fleshes it out and gives just added dimension and a different type of play style and feel. It is a different direction than I have gone with my own Death faction. I have a lot of this stuff. I can do a lot of this stuff, but it's not where I've been focused in my specific army. And it certainly would motivate me to get a few extra things that I had not considered that I was going to get, to pad and to expand on what I already have. And I would, if you were just getting into the Death faction, and in any way this type of a army theme appeals to you, and you're starting out right from the get-go with not a single model, the deals that you get from the big box, they're just incredible. They're some of the best that we've seen, and certainly on the scale. And they're not going to last forever. So I would definitely say, if you're getting into the Death faction, consider this, because it's very fluffy. It's very synergistic. It's pretty powerful. It's not unbeatable. There's plenty of stuff out there that would lay waste to this. I'm already hearing people in their tipping tapping and their typing saying, whining about this. Don't whine about it. There's plenty of stuff that's going to be able to oppose this, and there's plenty of stuff that's going to be released in battalion combinations that are going to be just as batshit crazy. That's the great thing about Age of Sigmar. It's all batshit crazy, and it just gets batshit crazier, which is fine. Hope you enjoyed, everybody. Have a great day.